So hi, Cathy. So thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for the
Great.
invite.
No, it's I mean, we obviously know each other pretty well and worked together a number of times over the years. But I thought it's just a great opportunity to share a little bit more about your story and you know how the hows and whys of your involvement in the officiating program and some of those experiences you've had over the years. Because I know you've had quite a few different experiences, and you can always tell a good story. So we'll get to certainly some of those stories today. But firstly, just for those people that may not necessarily know, you know, whereabouts are you from originally, where you're living now, and how'd you get involved as a TO?
I'm a New Zealander. I think everybody probably knows that. I went overseas and got stuck in Perth on my way back home to New Zealand and never quite made it, which was some 27 years ago. So I might get back there again one day, who knows. I got involved as a TO. We used to participate as age group athletes because we like to eat. So basically, we used to go to
Sorry, who was the we?
We joined a women's only group,
Okay.
and we used to train with them, and used to participate. I won't say compete, because we just used to go out, and we sort of every weekend we'd be doing a race, or we'd be part of a team in a race. We did that for a number of years, basically so we could eat. So, if you go swim training in the morning, you can have a Tim Tam at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Yep.
That was the, and a lot of us had small kids at that stage too. So it was a bit of an outlet to kind of get away, get fit. I suppose be an example to your kids as well too, that you were going out doing something aside from the eating Tim Tams and drinking wine with them. But, that was, and one of my friends became a triathlon coach. And part of the scope back then was that you had to do a TO course not to become a TO, but to tick it off, so that you. So
you just sort of understood if you're a coach, you understood what the rules were.
Yeah, and you know what? It wasn't actually such a bad thing, because there are a lot of coaches out there that don't understand the rules. So, doing a TO course was actually. So I went along and did the course, and I met Frank Stapleton, and Frank ran the course with Gay, I think it was, and they had that was near Australia Day, so. He said, "I'll come along and do your prac." And my friend couldn't, because she was doing something else. So I ended up going along and doing it. And then it's been sort of, I suppose, my entire life has been basically Frank making me go to races and talking me into going to races. He's talked me into going to Sydney, going to Auckland, I think 3 times. Go, you'll have a great time. Go, let's do this. And it'll increase your officiating experience and everything like that. He was right. I wouldn't ever tell him that, and hopefully he won't listen to this. But that was kind of the start of it. Sort of the going from age group TOing to ITU and that kind of thing.
So obviously, Frank was obviously a big motivator there in those early days. But was there something intrinsically, something within yourself that you sort of got out of officiating that made you want to continue on?
I think there's like 2 types of people in this world. There's people that volunteer, and then there's people that don't. And I've come to the conclusion that I'm probably I just like volunteering, because I like I like how it makes me feel. I like what I get out of it. Yep. So I volunteer for an animal association as well too. And I also volunteer. I do spend a lot of my time as a TO is basically volunteer hours as well. So I don't know. I think maybe it's that. A lot of my other officials are volunteers in other fields as well too. You know what I'm saying? They're people that like doing that kind of thing. So,
what sort of value do you get out of volunteering, not just in triathlon, but in all those things? What does it give you?
I think it makes me feel useful. It's probably, I think everybody wants to feel useful and wants to feel like they've got a place. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, certainly, yeah.
Bit of that sort of act, commit, belong thing, I suppose, like they try and do with the older, listen to me, older, where they try and get older people back into kind of being part of like, as you know, bowls clubs and things like that, being part of the kind of community set. The triathlon community in itself is quite a complex community. You've got lots of different, as you know, lots of different parts of it, but it is a good community to be sort of part of. Not everybody likes officials, granted, but I think most of the time you get a lot of respect from a lot of the athletes, and especially in your own, you get to know a lot of people, lots of friends. But I can go on about the friends part later. But loads
Yeah.
of friends. Yeah.
But still, yeah, it's interesting you say that community part of it. What is it that you love about being part of that community?
Um, I suppose I'm a little bit, I like a lot of the people within the community. So that's a hard one. I suppose I just think that everybody wants to feel they belong somewhere, you know. And I feel like I belong within this community because I have a fairly big role in it, in
Yep.
what I do, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't run the community by any stretch,
Yeah.
but I'm in with it, you know.
Yeah. So if we just, I suppose, move forward then to your role now within triathlon and then the world of triathlon and officiating, what's your current role? What are you currently doing?
At the moment, ignoring the virus situation and everything like that, my paid role at TWA is I sanction all the events, I do all the insurance, I run the courses for the technical officials and update and make sure they're paid. I do our calendar and get our liaise with all our race directors, which some of our race directors have unusual personalities and they're an interesting bunch to deal with. I like them all. They're all quite good in their own special way. So I do that. I do a lot of, I suppose, pick up a lot of jobs in the office that nobody else really likes to do in some ways. Sort of like the, jack of all trades but master of none, really. But primarily it's the insurance sanctioning and looking after the officials, making sure that we have correct number of officials at events, and officials suit the event, which is my biggest issue, is getting the right officials to the right events, because some officials are better at other events than others, that type of thing.
Okay. So what do you think makes a good official and makes them suitable to go to some events rather than others?
I think the biggest thing that I think makes them a good official is people that have actually, I think people that have, and I'm not saying you had to compete at a high level, people that have actually raced before, have actually done triathlons. I think that helps. It's obviously not something that has to be, but also people, I think you have to have a lot of empathy for people, especially when you're going to the lower level races like Pink and things like that, and try and keep in the back of your mind what got these people to this point. Okay. All that with the endurance athletes as well too, the Ironman athletes, and that have spent hours. What's got them to this point? What did they do wrong? Did they intend to do it wrong? And kind of work through like a set of processes to work out why. Were they drafting, or were they tired? Did they get up? And I think that you've got to be an official that can make decisions in the grey areas, and not so much the ones that are very black. People that are very black and white do tend to not last as long in the program.
Yeah. Is this something you feel you've developed over time, or is it something you always had?
I think probably. I don't think I had it to start off with. I think probably the first 5 years that I was an official, especially travelling. Once I started travelling interstate, I did learned an awful lot more. Especially in regard to the endurance events and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I don't think I started off with, I have to be honest.
Is there sort of any experience that stood out in your mind where you went, hey, I'm a little bit out of my depth, and and those experiences helped you sort of learn some of these skills?
Oh, look, I've been out of my depth loads of times. I've been one of the first races I was ever a race referee at. I had to go and sit behind the coffee van and ring somebody to help me, to talk through a decision. The first race I was ever race referee, I had our timing guy, Stuart Fuller, used to be an ITU official. And I went to him to get advice before I spoke to the athletes. So there's lots of times I really felt like I've been out of my depth. But I think the biggest key is, if you feel that you're out of your depth, is to find somebody to ask before you make a decision that is going to impact on the athlete. So just talk it through, just tell the athlete to go and sit down and talk it through, and then find somebody, even if you've got to do what I did and sneak behind a coffee van and ring somebody. If they don't know you're doing that, then it kind of helps you before you go and talk to them.
Yep.
So masses of times I feel I got appointed to an ITU role recently. That's quite a big one, that the race didn't happen, but I think probably every second day I felt like I was out of my depth, but I didn't let on. I just kind of worked my way through it. hopefully the race goes ahead next year. But that's,
Yeah,
you know.
I think that's really important, because obviously some people watching this will be fairly new officials in the program, and you come into officiating and think, well, I've got to know it all, and
No,
you soon work out you just can't.
no. And sometimes at the end when we do a debrief, if we've got a lot of time, we like to kind of ask each of them, what did you learn today that you didn't know? And even though I've been an official for, I think, 11 years now, I still go to races and I learn stuff I didn't know. You know, there's always new equipment. There's all sorts of new things. People find different ways of perhaps not doing the whole course, or there's just all sorts of really strange things happen sometimes that, you know.
Yeah, is there a sort of a strange incident in sort of recent memory, that sort of happened that has really sort of made you, develop skills quickly and get that extra help on board?
Well, we had just had a strange race. We always talk about Ironman 2017. It wasn't one incident; it was the whole race. And everybody, as soon as you talk about Ironman WA 2017, everybody just goes, "Oh."
Yeah.
And that was a real, I think, for every single member of the team, was a real sort of,
Yeah.
it was just a real eye opener for the whole lot of us. We had a cancelled swim, we had a bushfire, we had a guy that was hit by a kangaroo that was the same size as me and smashed up quite badly. We had, so some people that didn't. There's lots of emotion that day. Some people that they didn't. There was a marine animal. So the swim was pulled, and then because there was a fire, a bushfire, changed course, and some of them didn't even get to complete the bike course. So lots and lots of very, very emotional people, because they'd done all that training and didn't get to complete basically 2 legs of the course because they got pulled through things that didn't happen. And that was probably I think that was one of the hardest races I've been to, because there was just everywhere you looked, there was just something happening. Wasn't a race I probably would like to repeat either, but I learned a lot there. I learned a lot about, about the team. We had a really, really good team who, fortunately, when we had a debrief afterwards, we sat there and had a drink and talked about how our day went. And it was, we still talk about the team of 2017. I think that one will sort of stick with us for a long, long time.
What is it? I mean, I've spoken a couple of times there about debriefs and how that's worked. What do you think it is about debriefs that people can really learn from?
Well, I think a lot of us, because a lot of us don't like to be the one that asks the dumb question in the room. Okay, you don't want to be the one where everybody sits in and rolls their eyes at. But I like to think that the debriefs that we have, there's not anybody. We wouldn't do that to anybody. So if somebody's done something and they're not sure, so they might have made a mistake out in the field of play. We all make mistakes. We make mistakes every single time we go out there. There's something that we feel we could have done better, but we don't treat people like it. So it's nice to sort of talk about it and have a little bit of a laugh. You can even sort of have a little bit of a laugh at what people have done, as long as they're laughing about it themselves, about, funny things that have happened. Stuff like that. We had another incident. This was not 2017, but it was another Ironman. One of our pro athletes, who I won't name him, but he was a very, really big personality. And I had mentioned at the debrief that I wasn't on the senior technical team. I was just on the moto that day, and I mentioned that I had told this particular athlete off for drafting, and I just warned him and told him to back off. And then all of a sudden, it was just like magic. About 7 people in the room turned around and said, "Oh, number 7. Oh, I told him off as well." And somebody went, "Oh, I told him off as well. Oh, yeah, I had a word with him too when I was out." So there was like 8 of us that had actually told him off. And I banged into him later that day, and I said to him, "You do know that when we sat there was 8?" He goes, "Yeah, I know." And it was just one of those things where we'd obviously all come to the same conclusion about how we wanted to approach him. So he was one that pushed the envelope, and he's the first one to admit it now. If I meet him now tomorrow, he would tell me that he was the one that he would really push it right to that edge. And
I think I know who you're speaking about. We won't obviously mention names here, but
no.
But it's funny, those circumstances and things. You sort of did that change your approach to how you officiated after that, having that information?
No, I don't know. And do you know what? Like you say, you approach different races with a like a different mindset. So endurance racing is obviously different to sprint racing and things like that. No, it wouldn't. Didn't change my mind. And I think the other people all said that when they warned him, they thought, he should really get a penalty, but no, I'll let him, not knowing, of course, that all the rest of us had done it as well. So it was just, it's just one of those sort of, I mean, he knew his card was marked, that everybody was keeping an eye on him, but it was just
it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it was just interesting. I think it also, when officials start out, a lot of them, I think perhaps the first time you give a penalty, I remember my hands shook, like I was, it's not something you like to do, but if you find that, like in that particular instance, there was the other 7 people, the other 7 people did the same as what you did, then you think, well, okay, maybe my call was the right call. And I wasn't sure if he was drafting, but he was really close. But you know what I mean? Like the others did the same as what you did. So, because as you know, you could send 3 different officials out to one particular thing, and they'd all probably end up with to one situation. They'd all probably end up with a different result. Especially if they're like a race referee or something like that. Each situation where somebody might DQ them, somebody might warn them, and somebody, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So how do you approach that situation? What are your sort of criteria you'd look at in a situation to, how would you DQ as against just give a warning?
Well, I'd go out there. I think you've, I think that all boils down to that one word that we bandy around all the time, intent. So I go out there and I never make a decision straight away. I would, like we should do, I just sit there and watch them. Sometimes I'll write the numbers down in the back of my hand and just see if I come back and see you again, that kind of thing. But I look at why, I look at like a number of factors, especially if you're looking at the likes of Busselton, where it gets really windy in the afternoon, the wind, the weather conditions. Is it windy? Is it making it hard for these people to stay on the left-hand side of the road? You can tell they're all getting blown into the middle of the road. They're not blocking. They've been blown there for a reason. Are we looking at the second lap where they've done, they're up around the 150, 140K mark? What's actually happening? Was it a rough swim? I think because that impacts on how people are going to arrive, especially if there's a little bit of seasickness and how their day is actually travelling. And perhaps if it has been a really nasty swim, you're probably going to be a little bit more. But and did somebody, what was their intention when they overtook the person? If they dropped it in front and the other one didn't drop back with it, was it just because it was 150 Ks in and they're tired and their brain's not working properly? Or were they deliberately trying to come back and slingshot around, and flick themselves around the other person? And am I at the front of the field with the pros, or am I at the middle of the field with those age groupers that are after Kona slots, or am I at the back with those that just want to drag themselves across the line at 16 hours 30 minutes? Where am I? Where am I in my day?
Well, that's a lot to take in. And of course, this probably happens in your brain in about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So it's a really good to give an understanding, I suppose, for the newer officials that might be watching this of like, okay, there are a lot of components that go into how we officiate, and it's not necessarily as cut and dry as like, you've got 25 seconds to get past and you've got to be making forward progress, and there's a little bit more that sort of goes into it. And it's not something you're going to necessarily develop, because you wouldn't have had these skills in your first races where you're on the back of a motorbike, for instance.
No, but I think in some ways it's up to the TD or the race referee. Say at an age group race, if the weather is crap, okay, and if they give the instruction to the team and say, look guys, the weather's crap, it's really windy, some people whose bike skills aren't going to be that great, and you set the framework of how you want the team to officiate it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Or you go up there and you say to the team, look guys, this is state champs, smack them. Tell them that there is no warnings today, there are penalties because it's a state champ. You know what I mean? I think that the tone sometimes needs to be set for people. Not everybody kind of.
And have you experienced some good sort of officials you've worked with that were good at sort of setting that tone for you?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, there's loads of people I can think of off the top of my head that were really good at setting it up and letting the team know what they wanted, out of the team. Shane was always particularly good. He doesn't say much, but he'll tell people what he wants them to do. He's one example, but I
mean, we don't necessarily have to talk about people, but it's just an example of like, how setting up, how the technical delegate setting up an event can make such a difference to how you I suppose officiate and supports you as an official as well. The same token, I suppose, on the flip side of that, then have you had experiences where perhaps a TD hasn't sort of set up and you felt a little bit sort of, geez, what am I doing today?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I had a couple of events where kind of at the kind of where you felt almost like you'd been chucked. This is going way back in the early day, way
Yeah.
back, where we felt we kind of, there was one where we were told something that apparently was a joke, but it wasn't taken by the entire team as a joke.
Yeah.
About the number of penalties that they expected us to get, and that upset the whole team for the entire day, and it set the tone. And this is going way back. This set the tone for the whole day. It wasn't a good day, and when you sort of, told
how did
that,
you? I mean, obviously, we get put in situations. We have some good TDs. We have some TDs that perhaps are learning their craft. If you think back to probably those days, it was a TD that was learning their craft. How did you as an official sort of deal with that internally on the day?
Oh, I think they, that was a hard one. I think we kind of went out and we tried to do what they wanted us to do, even though you knew it was the wrong thing. Do you get what I mean? It's, you had to sort of look like you'd made an effort to do what they wanted, but you knew sort of deep down it wasn't the right thing to do. But they say this has gone way back. We've got different checks. There's different checks and balances and things now than that. There's a few people that didn't come back after that particular race ever, but that's their, as volunteers, that is their choice.
I mean, what's kept you coming back all these years?
Oh, I think that it's like we go back to that whole sort of belonging thing. I feel like I kind of belong as an official. I feel like I get a respect from a lot of the athletes for what I do. And I know that sometimes when you rock up at events, they go, "Oh, yeah, nice to see you. I knew you'd be here today," and things like that. And they know that nobody likes to cheat. Okay.
Yeah.
And especially in the, like if you're talking at the top end of that, nobody likes people, anybody to have an advantage that, like if you and I go to a restaurant and you get a glass of wine and yours has got more in it than mine, I don't like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nobody likes that. And I think they feel that when we're there, so I don't know, I suppose it's the satisfaction of knowing that when you're there, this sounds really cliche now, that you've actually made a difference to how the race, how the outcome and the race, and how people actually race the race rather than, and that you've made it safer as well too. That's at the end of the day, that's what we're there for, is to make it fair and safe and fair. That whole kind of thing.
And obviously over the time you've seen lots of different things evolve in front of you. Is there sort of I suppose an inspiring event that you've noticed, you've witnessed at a triathlon as an official, or it could be just as a spectator?
Oh, I've seen lots of, I was sort of making notes about that. I've seen lots of sort of inspiring things. Devonport, which is a race that I'd encourage officials to go to, because it's quite an unusual race. As you know, you've been there yourself. It's an unusual race. It's got a good mixture too. It's got the relay and everything like that, but it also has had the WPS. It's the para racing, which obviously was a qualification for Tokyo, but going forward. And I know that everybody talks about the paras, but just seeing, they always kind of make me feel a little bit useless in myself in what they do. And you probably remember there was a guy there, a Russian athlete, who had no arms from the elbows down and no legs from the knees down. And I'd never seen that. And he raced, and he did a great job.
Yep.
It wasn't the easiest conditions in Devonport either, I think you'll agree. But that's what I'd say to people who are officiating, who are able to travel, is to go to different states and go and look at some of these races, and you do see things like that. I also like to see some of our officials race as well. The other one was, we had at Ironman WA, one of our homegrown pros got second to Alistair Brownlee, and that was probably one of the most inspiring performances from a pro athlete I think I've seen, because running down Alistair, or not trying to run down Alistair Brownlee on any given day, is an impossible feat anyway. But he was behind him, but he still got second. He still can write down on his resume that he was second to Brownlee. And how many people can say that, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, the paras are probably my favourite, I feel. Just the sheer amount of gear that they have to drag with, they bring with them just astounds me.
Yeah.
And you've seen all the equipment that they have.
Oh, yeah. Certainly, yeah, and it's quite amazing. I mean, paras always stick in my mind in terms of, you know, what they're able to achieve, and they're athletes just like everyone else.
Yeah, 100%.
But they're probably more, in some ways, more humble and more.
They're funnier.
Understanding what we do too, and appreciative.
We'll try and be so politically correct about everything, but when you stand in a transition with people and they are so not politically correct, they are so funny because they can joke about bits, you know, about yeah, I know, things like that, and it's actually quite refreshing to hear people sort of quite, you know, do that. They're great people. I'd recommend anybody go to, if they have the opportunity to go to a high level para race like that, just go just once just to see how they race and how it's done. It's amazing.
Yeah. You've said a number of times here that sense of belonging and, you know, that part of the community that's been obviously really important for you as an official. Is there a sort of a standout experience, or even it can be a fun time that you've had being an official in the sport?
Oh gosh, it's
it may not necessarily be like actually officiating an event. It could have been something happened around an event or
a fun time. Yeah. Oh gosh, I have a lot of fun with, you know, we ran a series of, or we didn't, Sea Tri Club ran a series of 3 races where it was all of our junior under 23 sort of athletes, you know, the draft legal athletes. And Frank and I had a lot of fun doing that because we penalised them for absolutely everything because we were trying to set the tone for them racing interstate. So even though we knew what, you know, we were being quite tough on them, it was actually quite fun because they knew that at the end of the day, we were doing it so that they got an, you know, so that when they do go over east and they do race in another country, if they do get a penalty, they know how to cope with it and they don't fall to pieces. They also know what they've done. So I think those 3 events they were quite fun because we were setting them up for something that well, it didn't happen, but because the races got canned, but unfortunately, but it was fun in that you knew that the outcome, however many times you penalised them, and that the outcome didn't affect the race as such.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is all, I think, great information for sort of certainly people sort of starting out in triathlon and getting a sort of understanding. Do you have like a favourite type of event you'd like to be part of? If I could only do this one event the rest of my life, I'd do this sort.
No, I don't. Do you know why? Because I pick bits out of each. I know that sounds a bit sort of one in each camp, but I like the bright lights and the blue carpet of ITU because I think I'm a bit of a straight lines person and I do enjoy that. But I also love the endurance. I love endurance athletes, so I like Ironman. I like going there and just watching, you know, and talking to people and seeing what they've done to kind of get to the end of an Ironman. And then I also get quite involved with I quite like the tri-pink ones with the ladies in the tutus and things like that. But I think my ideal season is to get a mixture of all.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I like to do an ITU. I like to tick my ITU race off. And then obviously I work at Pink, and then I like to do along, you know, like I like to try and get to do one of each. So I always look at the calendar at the start of the season, and we sit there and we have and look at where where you want to go, and what obviously your funding and what money you've got to be able to. Not everybody I know except can afford to fly. We have to fly everywhere for ours. And I look at kind of so I try to keep a little piece of each. So when I get to ITU races, you kind of flick a switch. You go from age group racing, and then as soon as you step on the blue carpet, as you know, you flick and you become an ITU official, don't you?
Yeah.
It's like somebody, and then when you go to an Ironman, you flick into that other one that, you know, that with all the empathy for the long course athletes and things like that. And then when you go to a state sprint champs, you flick into that, like you kind of, each one has a different one. I wouldn't like to solely do one of each, but I do make sure that each season I get a little bit of the whole lot, you know, within. if you know what I mean.
What do you think by getting that exposure across those events sort of gives you? What sort of, how does it sort of round you out, you feel, as an official?
Um, well, I think it's like everything in life. I think whatever job you do, regardless of what your role is, you like to be able to kind of, if you're not an expert at one particular thing, like just say, for instance, you're a doctor, but you're not a plastic specialist or something like that, like you like to be able to do kind of like be a jack of all trades, to be able to flick and do each one. As you know, the ITU has huge expectations on you once you get up the ladder a little bit, on your time and what you're prepared to put in. So you've got to kind of look at whether you can do that. It's where perhaps like a state champ sprint distance, you turn up in the morning and it's only maybe 4 or 5 hours of your life. The ITU is, as you know, is quite a big build up prior.
Days, weeks, months, sort of thing.
Oh gosh, yeah, prior to the absolutely prior to the event. So I think if you can, and it's not, I think every official should, if they can, if possible, perhaps go to an ITU style race, and then try it, just to see what ITU isn't for everybody. Just to see what it's like. Even, over in Queensland, you've obviously got more opportunities, you've got more continental cups and things like that. But yeah, I'd just recommend everybody gives it a go. If you don't like it, then you don't ever have to go back to that style of racing again. And if you want to just go to your own little races in your own area, 100%, there's some really, really good officials, and that's all they do is they stick within their own kind of little backyard and just go to their age group races, and that within there, that's fine.
Yep. That's fantastic. Thanks for your time today, Cathy. I think it's been, we could obviously talk for hours, and we often do. But it's
no, we do. I know we do.
But this is obviously to give people an insight into, I suppose, how you operate as an official and your experiences and things like that. And hopefully, we can have a bit more of a chat in the future, and we'll pick some other topics to talk about.
But what's your favourite race then? What would your favourite one be? Style.
I'm a little bit like that. I like that sort of mix. I think if anything, it's seeing paras and juniors. I'd probably have to split between the two of those.
Okay.
And it could come. For me, it could be coming from developing a junior program in South Australia and seeing kids come through the ranks there and becoming elite athletes. I just love watching juniors and doing a briefing to a junior audience, and they look like deers in headlight, because you're giving them the full ITU experience often for the first time. These kids that are 13 and knee high to a grasshopper, and you give them that experience. It's actually quite inspiring to sort of to see them sort of come through the ranks, and the paras are fantastic for what we spoke about as well.
I know that's one I just tell everybody, if they can, just to watch the paras, even stream it, which you can with the ITU ones anyway.
Yeah.
But to be there is just whole another level, isn't it?
Yeah. No. Good.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that.
No problem.